Hi, I'm Morton Subotnick, and with my collaborator Lillevan, we'll be on the Interpretation series, performing on February 4th at Roulette. And we'll be doing a work I'm working on now called Song and Dance. Song and Dance is a live performance on the synthesizer and a computer with visuals, live visuals by Lillevan, which is basically based on pitch and melody in various ways, and pulse and rhythm as dance, and finally at the end they come together. I've been working on a general concept for the last 7 or 8 years of working with a thing I call From Silver Apples of the Moon to a Sky of Cloudless Sulfur revisited, and it was from the period that I was making records that I thought the music I was making, well, I didn't think it was true. The music I was making was for the medium, the phonograph medium, and they were records, and there was a lot of post-production involved. And as I got closer to the end of that was all consuming. I realized I could not do this on the stage. I couldn't play these. It didn't make any sense, because first of all, you'd need carloads of equipment, and second of all, what I did couldn't be reproduced in a performance, and shouldn't be, because they were for records. And I thought, on stage it should be spontaneous when I come on the stage and do something. And so I developed this notion of taking all my materials that I've been working on that I cared about and putting them in various things like samples and various other things, cutting them up, having access to them all, and creating out of the analog equipment a kind of instrument where I could capture anything I wanted at any time and improvise with those materials. And we're talking now around 1975, 1976 when I began to develop that. Eventually I stopped going out in public and was writing for instruments and big pieces with, everything. And then I was drawn back about 15 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago, drawn back because technology with small computers had gotten to the point that where I could combine my analog stuff with digital stuff and expand with a very small group of analog stuff. I could expand the whole thing that I was doing, and began this thing I said, From Silver Apples of the Moon to a Sky of Cloudless Sulfur revisited, which was all of those materials plus new materials. A couple of summers ago, I did a piece for Harvest Works for the River to River Festival, and I had a new idea, and I called it Song and Dance, and tried to evolve it into a new idea, and that was based on the idea that melodies, pitch, our use of pitch is the way in which we express emotion musically, and pulsing and rhythm is something that's part of the body. It's not an expressive thing. It makes you move with other people. It's a synchronizing thing that eventually causes groups to come together, and you even, in some cases, like with Hitler and other things, they use it to control groups and things like that. It can become awful, but it also can be good. They're two different things that music is made from, that are part of the body, and one is song and one is dance, the elements of it. And it's sort of a pun because I'm giving you a song and dance sort of thing. So recently I've got reignited with it because I toured Japan, and they're in the process of looking at a commission where I would go to Yamaguchi and develop this song and dance, and then take it on a tour of Japan. So I've been beginning to play with it, and I came up with some new materials and new ways partially with a breath controller that allows me to articulate certain kinds of gestures by just blowing while I'm using my hands for other things. And somehow it all started to come together. So this season I've sort of blossomed with it, and I performed bits of it in Berlin, and then at the National Gallery. So I think it's, by the time I get to Roulette, it's going to be a full-fledged a song and dance is going to be the name of it, and with Lillevan. I do performances, just sound performances, but usually when it's not a whole evening, when it's between 30 to 40 minutes, I feel I can do something that will hold by my standards, a piece that makes sense. But if I'm going to go for an hour to more than an hour, I feel much better about having a visual element where the some of the weight of what's going can go to watching and not just listening. And so Lillevan and I really worked on a good basis in that, and almost all the performances are full evening that we do. I think it's interesting to, informative anyway, perhaps, to sort of talk about from where this came that I'm doing, because it doesn't fit into the traditional view of avant-garde music out of modernism in the 20th century. But around 1960, just that 59, 60, 61, the explosion of technology was about to take place, and it was perfectly clear that that was about to take place. And I saw myself at the moment in time that was the moment equivalent or similar to when the printing press first came. The printing press changed the entire way in which language went, written language especially. And I saw a similar thing about to happen. In fact, when I did Silver Apples and Moon on the liner notes, I say that the record has become the new chamber music. People would be able to get access to it, to hearing the Berlin Philharmonic in Podunk, Oklahoma or something. You know, it wouldn't matter where you were; you could get your hands on it. This was really a new thought. I mean, I wasn't the only one who had the thought, but it was a new place that we were going, and it felt like we were about to witness music having the explosion that the printing press brought to language. And I thought at that time, if I had the aptitude, I would give up the clarinet and writing for instruments and dedicate myself to challenging the technology. And I also thought that 100 years from then, we would not go to watch in the new music. We wouldn't go to watch them play it. It would be more part of a multimedia experience. And so I made a multimedia piece in 1961 that was quite successful, and I felt that I did have an aptitude to it, so I pushed. I eventually, within a year, commissioned Donald Buchlow to work on a new synthesizer, or we didn't call it that. I called it an electronic music easel that would be an instrument that would help challenge this and push myself toward the idea of writing music for a record. And I happened, by chance, I guess, to get the commission by 1966 of doing one. So I dedicated myself to this future thing that I had no idea what the content was going to be. I began to come out with a music that was my music, but somehow being born from a different history, that almost. It's different than, quite different, I believe, than if I had followed the trajectory of the fine art modernism and the avant-garde that came from that. I think, to me, it's informing to know that it didn't come directly from the fine art modernism, so it doesn't have a lineage of that sort. It was an explosion that happened at that time. This is one remnant of that explosion.